Listen to Stephen Miller explain the fraud of the Department of Education.
Well, as we know, the Department of Education here in Washington, D.C., is overwhelmingly staffed by radical left Marxist bureaucrats who are in every way hostile to Western civilization, hostile to American interests, and hostile to our founding documents and culture. And so they are using their position and influence inside the Department of Education to try to force agendas like radical gender ideology, like critical race theory, like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all kinds of anti-America curricula and policies on the American people, on our students, on our children. So it's taking away from parents the ability to control and direct the education of their own kids, of their own families. So what we're going to do under President Trump's leadership and direction is to return that authority to the greatest extent possible to the local level where parents can control outcomes, while at the same time making sure that no federal funds are used to support racism, to support gender ideology, or support other ideas and principles that are offensive to the American taxpayer.
Now, here's what the Democrats always say, right? The Department of Education, it's not involved in the curriculum of the schools. That's a state, that's a local choice. And technically, they would be right. But let me tell you what the Department of Education does do. They fund NGOs, and those NGOs pay consultants to do all these studies, all these surveys, all this research to find out what are best teaching practices, what's the optimal curriculum, what types of things should kids do in school, what's the role of the teacher-student relationship. And of course, as we've seen over the last 4 years, when you have an extreme cultural agenda coming from one party, like the Democrats did, these NGOs conveniently start finding in their studies that students should be taught LGBTQ nonsense. Classrooms definitely should be decorated with pride flags. Students definitely need to be taught that black students are inferior and less privileged, and white students should feel bad for existing because they're inherently white supremacists. Imagine telling a 6-year-old that they're stepping into 1,000 years of guilt and should be ashamed of who they are. But I digress. These NGOs, with their studies and their conclusions, hold these conferences that the teachers' unions then adopt their findings to their local school district curriculums. And the Department of Education suddenly changes policies and standards. So if that local school isn't adhering to these new findings, well, they conveniently now aren't eligible to receive federal funds. So it's easy to lie and say the federal government doesn't set any curriculum, but that wouldn't be telling the complete picture, let alone even a slim portion of what the reality is.